Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. It's a great pleasure being here at TEDx. Very exciting, a bit nervous. The city, I would like to talk about the city, although I have a background in energy and environment. Well, the environment is obvious in the city. And I always wonder, what will our lives be like tomorrow? And how can the cities develop and provide for a good life in the future? I come from a company called Kairos Future. We research and strategy consultancy dealing with the future. So that's why I'm interested in this too. Urbanization is going on strongly. If we look at the world, if we look 35 years back, just a minority part of the people lived in cities. Most of the people lived in rural areas in the world, and we were about only 4 billion people in the world altogether. Then around the turn of the century, or just after, more than half of the world's population live in cities, in urban areas, and we're about 6 billion people today, steadily increasing. I wonder though how big or how many are we going to be in the future? When I was a kid in school, the teacher said we're going to be just infinite number of people, and there was no end of the population growth, which was a bit scary. But nowadays people say that we're going to level out at about 10, 11, 12 billion people, and most of these people are going to live in cities. 80-90% of us will live in cities. And therefore, the old city as we know it has to be something else. It would not be able to provide for a good life, I think, in the future. We can also look at which cities are big and which ones are small, and how this has changed. Back in the old days, London was one of the big, not the biggest, but one of the biggest cities at least. And if we go back even further, London was really the biggest city in the world. Now we see that cities like Lagos, anyone been to Lagos? It's growing steadily, isn't it? I haven't been there. It's probably really strange and amazing and bustling and chaotic and very different from the orderly London or the orderly Stockholm. What we see though is that in 2020 it's estimated to be the same size as New York. And whoever talks about Lagos? And this is where the future is going to be. In places like in Africa and in Asia, places that grow much faster than anyone can think of. And someone says that in 2050, Lagos will be the biggest city in the world. We'll see if we live that long. But which city would you prefer? Where would you like to live? In the big metropolis with all the possibilities and actions, but which is also, and here I go back to Ole's talk, it's industrial, modernistic view in most of these cities. A separation of functions where you do one thing at one place and other things at other places. You have these places where you sleep, other places where you work, next places where you shop, and still other places where you engage in entertainment. You can also choose the village, where you have everything together, where you have a functional integration. On the other hand, you don't have the same choice of things to do. You don't have the same choice of people to meet. You don't have the same choice of anything really, but you have everything in very close distance, and you don't have to travel and be stuck in any kind of communication. Because the big functional separated city is all about communications. And not only communications like here today, we talk to each other, we meet and interact, but this type of communication. We're getting stuck one way or another. So is this what you want? Or maybe the future city like this. In Copenhagen, they're developing now 13, they say, super highways for bicycles, which I think is a great invention. Although it is a spread out town, they have in Copenhagen, as in most of West European cities, they have this urban sprawl also. But instead of using the cars, they use bicycles. And this is a great way of getting into the city. They're going to have 4-lane bicycle roads with no traffic lights, no intersections, nothing to stop the bikes running. I don't know if any one of you bike here in Stockholm, where you get stuck all the time and don't get forward. In America, they have something called critical mass, which is not the ordinary day-to-day commuting to work. It's events, maybe like the TED events, but on bicycles, where they go and bike through the cities, a huge number of people, and they block all the streets from cars, and the cars, of course, get a bit annoyed by this. But bicycling is coming, but of course, we also need this. I don't think everyone can bike to work everywhere. So we need a pattern of interactions and communication systems, and these are what city planners are dealing with, and they are confused and they are puzzled on how we're going to solve this problem of getting huge number of people to and from work and to and from their living places. And of course, if you want to come around this problem, maybe you should design the city differently so you don't need to travel that far. But then, of course, what is the city for? Why do we have cities? What has been the point of having cities? If we look back in time, the city was a marketplace. It was where the emperor or the king or the ruler stayed, of course, but then people came in from the countryside and dealt with their merchandise. They brought in their potatoes or their seed or whatever, or their fish, sold it at the marketplace and bought other stuff and got home. Then when the industrial area, the modernistic area came, something happened. There were shifting values and shifting ideas, and suddenly the city was a place for both housing and working. You got your shelter there, and you got your income there, and most people walked, or some people bicycled to work, to the factory which was nearby. And this was the main reason for having cities, getting a lot of workers together to produce whatever was needed to produce. Now we see another shift in society. We also go from more collective modernistic values to postmodernistic individualistic values, and the city is something for development, for self-actualization, for bringing myself out and getting a new identity. And I choose where to live, not depending on where work is, but where I want to live. It used to be that we moved to places to work. Where is work? It is in that and that place. Okay, I move there. Now people ask themselves, where do I want to live? Where is it nicest? Where could I feel at home? And then they move there, and then they say, is there any place I can work around here? Oh, maybe not. Then I work in distance, or I travel, or things like that. What makes a city nice or good? There's a Danish architect and scientist, Jan Gehl and other two, Lars Gem. So they have studied this on what makes a nice city. And they talk about human activities, because we need the city for also human activities, which is interesting. And they say we have the necessary activities, things we need to do. We need to buy food, for example. We need to travel to and from work, things like this. And they see no difference really in well-planned. If you look at the physical environment of the city, there's no big difference in how people perceive a good or a bad city when it comes to the necessary activities. Then they talk about a lot of optional activities and then resultant activities or social activities. These optional activities are those that you can do or not do. You could choose, and you can choose again, and you can choose not to do them. And in a city where they have a good physical environment, the number of optional activities is much bigger. And cities where have a lot of optional activities, those are perceived as being nice places to live. You can choose where to live and where to go and what to do, and with these possibilities you find a nice place to be. And that is an attractive place. But also the city is an identity marker. You are a student at Uppsala University, you are a New Yorker, you are a Stockholmer, you are whatever kind of city that attracts you. And of course in Sweden we have this not fight, but at least discussions between being a Stockholmer, being a Göteborgare, Czech Göteborgare, or things like this. And you are perceived as a different person. And if you're from Göteborg, you're supposed to tell a joke, right? But what is the attractive city, and who should it be attractive to? Well, as we see it, the attraction is for visitors, of course. You want people to come there, to visit, to be there, go around and do things as a temporary visitor. But then you also want people to live there, residents. So it has to be a nice place to live. And preferably also attracted to business, so that business or organizations or whatever enterprises will be there, organize there, and employ people so that they have a living. And there's a lot of things that are required to get this attractive city. We talk about culture, we talk about trade, but there also has to be charm. It has to have a certain feeling. It doesn't mean that it needs to be well designed. A lot of old cities that were really never designed, they were just kind of evolved, are perceived as being very charming places where you want to go and there's a certain atmosphere. And of course you need all the service and the labor market and the education and all this that are kind of base functions. If these don't work, you don't want to be there really. But you have all the choices all the time, and we have what is different today than it used to be is we have this choice of choosing one place from the other. And if these things don't work, it won't be attractive. And that's why you see cities losing inhabitants, losing residents, because they move out of there and move to other places. And this is hard for many cities to understand. Those mayors or politicians in the cities to understand that their city is not growing anymore. It's really decreasing. Is there kind of a sustainable city then? I think of a porous city, a city with in-betweens, with things that are not used yet, is also a porous city. We see all these new city developments in different places, in different cities. Some of them are really fantastic architecture, like the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, the Turning Torso in Malmö, and other things. But they are very much based on the old functionalism and separation of tasks, doing different things at different places. New city developments look into integrating new areas. There was a show or a display or exhibition is the word in Paris last fall or last summer that was introduced by President Sarkozy on what can we do about Paris? What is the future of Paris? And one of many examples was this, where you have Paris up there in the middle, or a bit to the right. Here's the present center of Paris. Here's the ocean. And they want to create, one of the suggestions there was, let's make Paris a harbor city instead of an inland city. And can that be done? Can this be integrated into something new? But there has to be in-betweens, areas where you kind of go and see if this is not filled with function. Where there is connections between different areas and also a kind of a emptiness. And I like to compare that with Canaries. I don't know if you know the stories of the Canaries. In the old times, in the coal mines in England, they used Canaries. They were also down there in the mines. They were singing along happily, or at least singing along. And when they got quiet, they knew danger is about. Then there was too much of dangerous gases or too less oxygen in there, and they got quiet and they had to get out of the mine as quick as possible. These were excellent of understanding how to run the mine, but I think we need some kind of Canaries to understand about the future city. What are the Canaries that show us if this is a living city or something dying? And I think all the spaces in between where people do new things, we have new performances, new arts, new ways of inventing, being artist and inventing ideas. Those places are today's Canaries. And if we don't find these places, if everything is structured, well planned, the city is going to die. So we have this contradiction between planning the city and letting the city plan itself. And I think the sustainable city is one that has both these dimensions at the same time. And therefore we go from the city, the urban city, we went over to the urban sprawl that's spread out all over the city, or all over the surroundings of the city, rather. They now talk about the new urban, new urbanism has been the word for the first decade of the century. This is Jakriborg outside Malmö. Anyone been there? Which is a copy of a Hansa-type city with new modern amenities, but still built from the old-fashioned style. Are we going back to the city? The discussion today is getting a denser city. Densification is the word, but I think also getting a green city. Combining the dense and the green, combining being together and being environmentally friendly, if you want, or environmentally aware would be the better word. To see how this new city can really decrease our ecological footprint and decrease the resources needed, and instead being a more efficient way of living and a better future for our kids. If you plan a city from the beginning, like in China, this Kaufeijian, I think it's called, International Eco City, you can plan it from the beginning. But usually you don't have this possibility of designing a city right from the start. Here some also Swedish architects from Sweco are there participating in this, in planning and designing the city to be really ecologically friendly. So the challenges I see for the future are a few. Attraction and choice, because we choose all the time, and what city would make me choose to move there? It's really hard for a city to attract all the people it wants. It needs both function and charm. Functionalism is not bad, it's needed. We need to be provided with all the stuff that we need, but we need charming places to enjoy. It needs to be a melting pot where all these ideas come together, where diversity helps us in creating new values and new ideas, and have letting the city really be a collaborative project between the people and the organizations and the companies being there. The city needs to help me to be create my image, my identity. As I said before, being a Stockholmer or a Göteborgare or a New Yorker or whatever you want to be. And then we need a space in between. How do we really preserve the in-between spaces and have our Canaries so that the city won't die, although it might be well-looking, but not a nice place to be? And finally, being both dense and green at the same time, reducing our ecological footprint. Thank you.